Hello and welcome to Tinker Talks, the audio format podcast that talks about everything behind the fence of Tinker Air Force Base. I'm Second Lieutenant Lajinska Bilajama.
And I'm Paul Shirk.
And we are your hosts for this episode. Today we are joined by Colonel Louis Ruscetta, the B-52 Senior Materiel Leader with the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center's Bomber Directorate. Thank you for joining me today. Could you briefly tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Lajinska and Paul. Appreciate the opportunity. So, Colonel Lou Ruscetta. I'm from Tampa, Florida. It was where I grew up, part of an Air Force family. Dad is a retired Chief Master Sergeant. I graduated from the Academy back in '98. I did a brief stint in the Space and Missile Career Field before I went into acquisitions. And then as an acquisition officer, I've been lucky enough to see a wide range of capabilities and to run different programs between space, weapons, command and control, and then aircraft, as well as SOCOM. And now being the senior material leader for the BUF is a pretty awesome experience. So, and in my role as a senior material leader for the BUF, so I oversee a program office of about 400 military, civilian, and government contractors who keep this weapon system safe, affordable, and effective. And probably talk a little bit about that more later. But in doing so, we manage, system level activities for development, procurement, and sustainment activities within the B-52. So, for example, like within what that means in our sustainment activities, while the SPO, we define and oversee the enterprise activities working with all of our stakeholders, including the depot, supply chain, operational units, and industry. So, if the supply chain is there, they're managing a specific part and they will make sure that part is available. They might manage the configuration control of that part. We will look at that part and let's say it's within the landing gear, we will manage the landing gear system and that we will understand how all of those parts together fit within that landing gear system. And then we'll manage the system of systems and how does that landing gear system fit, like in this case, in a sustainment standpoint within the overall aircraft, B-52, to understand how that impacts aircraft availability of the B-52 so we can prioritize and address our sustainment needs. And then within the development side, development and acquisition side, we look at how we are understanding what are the combat capabilities needed as we look from within our partners from Global Strike, for example, and the users, understand what that combat capability is required. And then we go and work with industry, define a material solution that meets that combat capability. And then we work the development, the testing, the integration into the overall platform, and then eventually the procurement, fielding. And then as everything cycles, gets back into the sustainment area where we look at how do we make sure we are keeping it up, upgrading it, making sure it still meets that capability moving forward.
Wow, that is a lot of components. For our listeners that don't know, the BUF is a nickname for the B-52 Stratofortress. It is an American long-range strategic bomber that has been in service for almost as long as the Air Force. On April 15th, 1952, the prototype first took flight, making this week the 70th anniversary of the B-52's first flight.
So you really can't imagine the Air Force without the B-52 because Air Force 75, B-52 70, they're hand in hand.
Exactly. So it's been around for a long time with lots of rich history. I'm sure many are wondering, how is it still fulfilling its mission?
First of all, it's an amazing aircraft. I love the history of the aircraft. Originally, when it was designed, so Boeing engineers designed this as a 4-propeller aircraft. And when they met with some of the leadership in Dayton, Ohio, the Air Force leadership back then, it just did not meet the requirement. Again, if you look at the time frame, this was entering the Cold War, right after World War II. What do we need? And gearing up for our adversaries, right? Soviet Union, that type of thing. So they needed much more long range, much higher altitude. So over the weekend, Boeing engineers went back to their hotel, still working in Dayton, Ohio, phoning back to the mother office back in Seattle, Washington, and developed what is now we have this 8-engine aircraft that we call the B-52. So it's folks have called it over-designed. That helps with the longevity. I will tell you what, however that design was, I was designed perfectly for what we need, because it's been a very versatile platform. So as I talked about earlier, right, it was designed for the Cold War, as both a conventional and nuclear deterrent to our adversaries during that time. But since its first flight in 1952, not only has it been a nuclear deterrent, but it's served as a test bed for the Air Force. It's served as a test bed for NASA, firing off hypersonic rockets and hypersonic aircraft, off of its wing back in, the early days of the platform. In Vietnam, it was the backbone of some of our major strategic bombing operations. Think Linebacker 1, Linebacker 2, literally being the reason why countries came to the negotiating table with the United States, right? So, again, getting into that versatility. It served in the Persian Gulf and our global war on terrorism efforts. So being called to protect, even lately, very recently, right, when the U.S. and NATO retrograded out of Afghanistan, it stood overwatch protecting our troops during those missions as well. So very versatile from both the conventional and nuclear missions. And now it's still a sign of force and caution to our adversaries across the globe, right? So it's a quick reminder, not only that the power that the Air Force projects, but also the short response time it takes for us to project that power globally.
Wow. You mentioned all this history, and the LCMC being focused on sustainment of the aircraft. Recently, there's been a lot of press about Damage Inc. 2 leaving the Boneyard to serve as an integration model to test how well new technologies and current future modifications will integrate with the B-52 aircraft. Can you tell us about the modernization efforts you're running?
Absolutely. The B-52 has actually entered into a unique stage, because right now we are undergoing the biggest modernization effort in the history of the B-52. So in the past, we've had much more sustainment funding than we've had development funding. But right now, our investment portfolio is, for the FY22 budget, is right at about $700 million just for this year alone, with our sustainment budget being about $500 million. So we can see the shift in our portfolio to the investment side, which reflects the importance of the modernization efforts going on. So we're posturing this weapon system to make sure it can operate within the environments, against peer competitors. It doesn't mean we're going to see a stealth B-52, let's not get me wrong there. But what we will see is a B-52 that will be able to complement the B-21 as we perform the missions the combatant commanders need us to perform against peer adversaries. So one of the programs, for example, is our radar modernization program. That's where we're upgrading the current 1960s core radar to an active electronically scanned array radar. Very similar than what one of the versions of the F-18 uses right now. So, almost like that fighter type quality radar capability within the B-52 that's going to be used to really increase and upgrade that quality target quality track that we get, that the crew needs so much to prosecute its missions. So that is one of those just amazing capabilities that is really important going on to the modernization of the B-52. That team just this past year entered into its development phase, passed our milestone B through the approvals, and actually just last month finished its critical design review step. And now they're going into getting ready for the software quals and test activities as we move forward. Another upgrade area that is got a lot of attention is our communication suite. So within the B-52, we're adding a tactical data link capability at Link 16. We're actually the last aircraft in the CAF to get Link 16. Along with the radar, we're also upgrading our communication suite. So B-52 is adding a tactical data link capability to Link 16. We're actually the last combat aircraft to get a Link 16 type capability. We're also upgrading our secure beyond line of sight comms. And then we also have two efforts within our nuclear comms programs to upgrade our VLF LF system, and then our AEHF Advanced Extreme High Frequency communications capability that's used to receive and report emergency action messages. So very critical comm suite upgrade that's going along right now simultaneously. Also, we're in early stages of converting the crew from. We're currently at a 5-man crew inside, or 5-person crew inside the B-52. We're converting that to a 4-person crew. This will move the electronic warfare capabilities to the navigator position, so we actually can eliminate one of the crew members. So reducing manpower requirements for global strike without reducing any of the capabilities of the B-52 as we move forward. Using some automation type of capability in there as well. So that's a big step forward as we look, as global strike and the Air Force postures to a new force structure. How do we utilize and get more efficient crews and manpower moving forward? This quad crew concept is really important in the future of the B-52. And then one of the big ones that it's constantly in the news is our commercial engine replacement program, commonly known as SERP. That's where we're replacing our TF-33 Pratt & Whitney, our old TF-33 Pratt & Whitney engines with the F-130 Rolls-Royce engines. So, but it's really much more than an engine replacement program. That's maybe about 25% of the effort. We are actually upgrading the entire cockpit. It has to get upgraded to interface and interact with the new engines. Our infrastructure within the aircraft. How the fuel system, our engine, our power generation system, that gets upgraded as well to meet the new F-130, interact with the F-130 engines. Our engine power management, how we control the engines inside the cockpit, all of that has to get upgraded and addressed in order to get to our new commercial engine replacement program. And that's pretty key in getting us out to 2050, being with the our engines is one of our most critical aircraft availability drivers right now.
Now it's not just new engines replacing directly the TF-33. It's actually making the engines that are compatible with the airframe. And then you also have improvements like the efficiencies. Would that increase the range or anything like that?
Yeah. So we scoped this program to also make sure this wasn't a 20-year development effort and wanted to make sure we can get this on as quick as possible. So we did scope this program on the engines to fit within the current flight profile of the TF-33. So we didn't want to change really too much on the performance side. And it's not like we're trying to make this go, Mach 1 or Mach 5 or anything like that. But, the TF-33s are 60-year-old engines. These Rolls-Royce, much newer technology has grown since then. So the fuel efficiency is much better. With that fuel efficiency comes increased range that we will get. That increased range also has bigger benefits outside of just the B-52.
More time on station.
More time on station. Less tanker requirements. So quite a bit of combat capability that not only do you bring to the B-52 itself, but also to the Joint Force Commander, Air Component Commander, because now that individual has more flexibility and really within its resources, because I don't have the same dedicated requirement need as I did with the old TF-33s.
So is the Commercial Engine Replacement Program, or SERP, just one part of this overall initiative ongoing with damaging too?
It is just one part of it. It was the genesis of it for sure, but there are a lot of opportunities. So, what damaging to, it gives us the opportunity to iterate early for some of the efforts we're doing on SERP. So we can obviously, what we're going to do is, using digital engineering, we can start looking at how some of these fit within the digital space. So using this within the digital space, make iterations early on, and then this will be our first chance to do things also within the physical space, rather than the first time we put an engine on an aircraft is with the test aircraft. We can actually put an engine on an aircraft here at our Boeing facility on Damage Inc. 2 as a test bed, as a fit check, so you will, just to validate what we've done on the digital engineering space. So, a lot of the modernization efforts we're doing as we take digital engineering, model-based systems engineering type of activities into account, really changes our approach in what we've done in the past from an acquisition standpoint. And it's not just changing the way the Air Force is doing it, it's really, modernizing how some of our industry partners are approaching development activities as well. So while this has been used, digital engineering has been used in the commercial world, the race car world is known for it. Many different places are used as benchmarks for digital engineering and model-based systems engineering. Within the DoD, it's something that's still fairly new, and we're still, wrapping our arms on how to make sure we can use this effectively and efficiently. So this is one place where we can, Damage Inc. 2 offers that ability to start bringing in some of those digital engineering aspects. It also gives us the ability, not just for SERP, but as we look for new initiatives and innovative efforts. So gives us another platform that we can bring industry in to do, fit checks, so they can come and see an aircraft, see what it takes to, what type of logical, electrical, mechanical type interfaces that they need on whatever system that they are developing and trying to show us brings combat capability, rather than in the past with only 76 aircraft. If I wanted to take that opportunity, we had to set a jet down, take it out of the flying schedule, things like that. Now we have it here in OKC rather than just at Minot, Edwards, or Barksdale, so I don't have to impact operations at all. So a huge lift for us from the development side, in that we don't have to use operational aircraft, and then also giving us that chance to early iteration in the design and development process, so we can actually really identify and tackle problems earlier than what we would have found normally in an older way of doing business.
And sir, earlier you were mentioning that it takes a village, and I think that kind of applies here, because you've got Boeing. They, outside the gate, just built a brand new building just for Damage Inc. 2. And you have the different facilities around the country. So what is Tinker's part in the actual upgrades when all the design work is finished?
Yeah, right now our plan is, especially for the big modernization efforts, the first 2 test jets will be done off station, will be done by Boeing to make sure we understand what that workload is to do the integration. The depot is a machine. We don't want to impact the machine with unknowns and kit proofing and trying something in for the first time. But once we have that down, our plan is to utilize the depot as our install center. So as an aircraft comes in already on its timeline for depot, that aircraft gets teared down already, and then utilize that as an opportunity to inject the installs in. Huge workload again for the ALC and for Tinker as a whole. So we expect this to be a really important hub for our modernization efforts.
It really sounds like this program is encompassing General Brown's Accelerate, Change, or Lose, and so many different facets as well. You mentioned Rolls-Royce, and the B-52 is Boeing. So how important is the partnership with Boeing on this long-term initiative?
Boeing is an amazing partner. We can't move forward without them. And the B-52 has been a important part of what they're doing here. And, they're based out of the Boeing organization that works B-52 is actually based right outside the gate here in Oklahoma City. So right outside the back gate. So it's an amazing partnership, and we can't succeed without them succeeding. And that's the interesting part in program management is I incentivize my folks, and I try to incentivize Boeing to succeed, because if Boeing succeeds, then we succeed as a program office, we succeed as an Air Force. So they've been the original engineering manufacturer since the beginning of the B-52. They were the original designers. As we've moved forward over the past 70 plus years, of the B-52 design. Obviously things have developed. Not everything is completely Boeing on the aircraft, but we still partner with Boeing on the integration because, from that platform standpoint, while there are a few capabilities that don't need to be integrated, into the mission computer or things like that, they can be federated systems. As we understand the sustainment, the stresses, the bones of the aircraft, what the aircraft can do, what are some of those sustainment activities, we do, really partner with Boeing on that. So I can't stress enough the partnership Boeing has and the expertise they have, right? As, we look where government and industry is now compared to where government and industry was before when it comes to developing capabilities. Industry by far has much more innovation than the military does and than the government does. And that's almost flip-flopped from 40, 50 years ago. So, we really rely on not just Boeing, but our entire industry partners, because there's quite a few of them out there to support the B-52 and move us forward. You talk about General Brown's accelerate, change, or lose. We really stress within the B-52 to initiate, innovate, and improve, right? The first thing we need to get going is we got to get going. We got to move, do something. Then, okay, if we need to do something, we probably need to do it a different way because, we need to make sure we are matching the speed of our adversaries as we are putting capabilities on. And finally, we want to make sure whatever we do is better than what we had before, right? So that is a theme within the SPO and within the organization that we strive for, that we're also pushing with Boeing as well. And I can see that working along in the entire B-52 enterprise as we move forward these last couple of years.
So I imagine this is a very costly initiative. Have we found that it's actually more of a cost benefit to the Air Force to continue to sustain and modernize the buff as opposed to replacing the entire airframe?
Absolutely. So, part of the acquisition process, we do business case analysis. There's quite a bit of material solutions that we look at and analysis of alternatives to make sure the Air Force is going down the right direction and the services are going down the right direction when we pick a material solution. So, we look across the entire range of .mil PF during that acquisition process to make sure that this is the solution that is needed to meet the requirements. So when you look at the B-52 and really when you look at the bomber fleet we have as a whole, as well as the future of the bomber fleet, which includes the B-21, small numbers, old aging platforms. So the B-52, while it's definitely at 70 years old, it's the oldest platform out there. But the B-1 and the B-2 are not spring chickens either. So what we have seen is the best partner, what the Air Force is looking at as the best partnership with the B-21 is this modernized B-52. And when you look across the whole, what we're doing across 76 aircraft, and these is again biggest modernization effort in the history of the platform, across the entire fleet of 76, it's less than $200 million a piece to upgrade the B-52, and that's development and production costs. So that is a full range of investment costs altogether, where most aircraft nowadays, to buy a new aircraft, just on the procurement side alone, costs somewhere over $100 million, $150 million normally, and that's not including the recurring engineering and development costs that come on top of that. So we are getting the Air Force is getting a new bomber on the cheap when we look at what we can use the B-52. I don't consider the B-52 an aging platform. I don't consider it an old platform. It's got some older bones. There's no doubt about it, right? We can't. Every aircraft out there that we have in the fleet now, were built in either 1960 or 1961. But this is going to be a brand new buff when all these modernizations are being fielded, and an exciting new capability for Global Strike.
What does this upgrade mean to the local Tinker community?
So Tinker is really, and the Tinker community is really the center of excellence for B-52 sustainment and modernization. When you look at what the importance Tinker plays in the B-52, the depot is here. So every aircraft comes through Tinker Air Force Base every 4 years and gets completely stripped down to go through the depot and then built back up. There's no other workforce in the world that knows the B-52 as well as the depot workforce here. And then we are looking, as we look into the modernization, how do we take advantage of that? So we have a pretty small fleet, 76 aircraft across the entire Air Force. So, and at any one time, we've got about 12 to 13 aircraft here at Tinker, going through or waiting to go through depot. So we really track our aircraft availability. That's, to make sure that Global Strike has the aircraft available to do its mission very closely. And so as we look to modernize the fleet, we need to make sure we are accounting for that. So that's where Tinker comes in to play, and utilizing the depot as much as possible. So if I've already got an aircraft stripped, I bring it in stripped down to build it back up. We're working and partnering with AFSC and with the complex here to take advantage of some of that sunk cost when we use it in sustainment, and then how do we partner our installs along with that depot activity. That's a huge increase in workload. That will most likely be an increase in facility requirements that we're looking at now here at Tinker. That's going to play a key role in the future of Global Strike. So in the future of the Air Force's bomber fleet. So the partnership with AFSC, not just on the depot, the supply chain, and what we're going to the impact that these modernizations will have. We are also doing a lot of what I call modernization through sustainment. So while we talked about some of those big modernization efforts, we have smaller modernization efforts that we are working on, that we rely on the supply chain management wing here at Tinker and at other AFSC bases to help us out with new systems, new items that are no longer 60 years old. Instead of being built in the 1960s, are now being built in 2020, 2022, that just by definition have new capability, have new things that can be brought to the B-52 and really modernize that capability across the platform using sustainment activities, not necessarily using the investment activities. So when you look at the partnership that we need from ALC, from really Tinker as a whole in that modernization process, because especially as we look at the aircraft availability and making sure we keep enough planes out in the field to meet operational requirements, we've got to really rely on what's coming through the depot here to be our mainstream for the modernization installs.
Sounds like a lot of opportunities in different areas.
Absolutely.
What does it mean to you to have been involved in this initiative?
So the B-52, and it's not really, I would say it's not the initiative. It's being involved with this platform. So, as you said earlier, right, this platform has been around since 1952. April 15th, 1952 will be the 70th anniversary of its first flight. It has a storied history through the multiple campaigns that it has participated in, for the national defense of the United States and to meet our military objectives, for the research that it has participated in with NASA and hypersonics, and we're still doing hypersonics work now. It's pretty cool when you look at, I've got members in the SPO that, flew in Linebacker 2. I've got members in the SPO that flew in the Gulf War, that flew the B-52 for many other missions. And they want to come back here because they want to be part of the platform.
You literally have multiple generations. I've heard of stories where the son or even the grandson of an original pilot is flying that aircraft.
Absolutely.
And even here sustaining it.
Yeah. This is a platform that it really is a family in all sense of the word, not just how close we are, but because of the generational impact that it has had. And I'll tell you, especially in the military, right? Commanders and leaders come and go. We come every 3-4 years in the acquisition, 2, 3, 4 years, and everyone brings its own, his or her own unique aspect to an organization. But none of that can compare to what the actual platform brings to the organization and the meaning that it brings. So we don't do this for ourselves. We do this for the folks that are flying the aircraft, that are the crews that are flying it, the folks that are maintaining it, just for what the B-52 means to people. It was awesome as Damaging 2 was coming from Arizona, traveling out here to tinker, big social media following, what it meant to people just driving by as they see an aircraft that, retirees who said, wow, I worked on that plane, back 30, 40 years ago, stopping, talking with the truck driver, making sure they took pictures with it, bringing their, going home, bringing their grandson and bringing him back to the plane because they were right next to where it stopped for the night so they can share that with their family. I don't think any individual can bring that. That's something that is, and that's what's unique about the Air Force is that's the history of the Air Force. That's the history of our mission. And that's what gets, that's what makes what we do as a profession special. And it doesn't mean, people wearing the uniform, because we've got, like I said, we've got military, civilian contractors. I've got, I like to say, I don't do much. I've got 400 people in the program office that really, they deserve all the glory because they do all the work. We've got a number of folks in the program, in Boeing Oklahoma City and Boeing Seattle, Boeing St. Louis that are doing just as much work for the platform as we are. So people talk about supporting the warfighter. A lot of acquisition folks have been deployed. I've spent quite a bit of time deployed. How do we define a warfighter? A warfighter is somebody who supports a war effort. And, the folks that we have here are just as much warfighters, as anybody else, because they're doing quite a bit to keep this aircraft, safe, affordable, and effective to make sure it stays in the inventory. And not only is it something that we utilize, but it's something the Air Force wants to use and the Air Force wants to invest in.
Really a piece of American history. Sir, as we're wrapping up this interview, is there anything else you'd like to add?
It's just an awesome experience to be part of something that's been flying. As you said, Paul, 70 of the 75 years that the Air Force has been in existence, there's been a B-52 flying in the air. And again, we didn't get to talk too much about the people that are involved in it, but it really takes, we've all heard the adage, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So when you look at the stakeholders that are involved in the B-52 and not just the modernization, but the sustainment, and we have LCMC that leads the modernization effort. You really have AFSC that does the majority of the sustainment work. When it comes to, obviously the depot, we have the supply chain management wing, not part of AFSC, but the Defense Logistics Agency, DLA, is a big stakeholder for us. Then obviously Global Strike Command and 8th Air Force from the operational side, and then all of our industry partners. It's an amazing opportunity and an amazing experience. So, and we talked a lot about the big things, and there's quite a bit of small things that we're doing as well that are really, really important. A couple months ago, we just finished fielding curtains, privacy curtains for the crew members. And that was to make sure that we had a privacy curtain for the bathroom for our female crew members. Not an expensive effort, taking a sheet, putting it out there, but I'll tell you what, it was really important for us to try to get that done, as effectively and efficiently as possible, and really important for those female crew members that, didn't have that privacy in certain times.
You're on board that aircraft for a long time. The little things make a difference.
Absolutely. There's missions there that go, close to 24 hours, actually more than that. And we have to double up the crew size and things like that. So absolutely. Small wireless headsets, things that we would think is pretty easy, but when you look at, complications of making sure we meet the cybersecurity requirements, making sure we don't, short out any of the items within the jet when we plug something in to something like a USB port. Those are all the things that the little things that the engineers do, working with the maintainers. We have a really good relationship with the 2nd and 5th bomb wings, both on the ops and the maintenance side. So we can have direct calls if somebody needs something. We can get our engineers Sometimes it's a priority and we have to prioritize, but it's definitely all important to us. So whether it's something like, making purchasing a bag that's fireproof that we can safely put cell phones in during operations, so we don't have to worry about lithium batteries exploding or catching fire, to something as big as the commercial engine replacement program. It's an amazing opportunity, an amazing organization that really works this effort.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today, sir. I have learned a lot. What about you, Paul?
Me as well.
And it's been wonderful celebrating the 70th anniversary of the B-52.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a great opportunity. Thanks.
For more information on Tinker Air Force Base, follow us on social media at Tinker Air Force Base on Facebook and Instagram, and at @team_tinker on Twitter, or visit our website at tinker.af.mil.